A resurfaced interview has reignited wild claims that Meek Mill was once taken hostage by the Rollin Crips in Los Angeles, forcing Rick Ross to allegedly pay $50,000 to secure his release. Was it extortion or just a business transaction? The story takes a darker turn as the alleged mastermind, Loose Cannon, was recently arrested alongside Big U and others in a massive federal sting. With allegations of murder, human trafficking, and extortion surrounding the Rollin 60s, is there more to this story than meets the eye? Tune in for a deep dive into this dramatic, high-stakes moment in hip-hop history. Los Angeles, a city of dreams and nightmares. In the heart of Hollywood's glitz and glamour, there's a darker world where power is measured not in fame, but in fear. And in 2014, Meek Mill found himself caught in the grip of that darkness. It started with tweets, reckless words typed into the void. But on the streets of LA, words aren't just words, they can be invitations to war. And Meek, fresh off a high-profile feud, had just put himself on the radar of the city's most feared organization, the Rollin Crips. Meek Mill was in town for a show, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. That night, he walked into an LA club, moving like royalty, flanked by security. But what he didn't know was that his welcome party had already arrived. Standing in the shadows was Loose Cannon, an OG in the Rollin 60s, known for handling business with an iron fist. And when Meek stepped through that door, Cannon and his crew moved in. Soon as he walked in, his security peeled off, Loose would later say. They saw what time it was, and they wanted no parts of it. Meek found himself face to face with a man who wasn't interested in selfies or autographs. "Get Ross on the phone," Cannon demanded. Heavy breathing. Outside, under the neon glow of the club's lights, the reality of the situation set in. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a negotiation for freedom. But this wasn't random. This was brewing. Meek had been reckless, throwing shots on Twitter, airing out frustrations that had rubbed some powerful people the wrong way. He had been beefing with Game, 50 Cent, and a long list of street-connected rappers. His issues with Drake over ghostwriting had already put him in the crosshairs of the industry, but it was his war of words with the Game and 50 Cent that had real-world consequences. In 2016, the Game called Meek a snitch, claiming he told police about a robbery involving Sean Kingston in an LA club. Meek denied it, but the damage was done. Game, tied to the Pyru Bloods, sent out a warning shot, 92 bars, a diss track aimed at Meek, making it clear that he wasn't welcome in LA. Then came the Instagram insults with 50 Cent, a war of memes and mockery that took a dark turn. Meek had called out Fifth, who was known for having deep ties in the streets, including connections to the West Coast. When Meek pulled up in LA, it wasn't just industry drama, it was street politics. So when Loose Cannon and the Rollin 60s spotted him that night, they saw more than just a rapper. They saw a liability, a loudmouth outsider moving reckless in their city. Rick Ross, Meek's mentor, was thousands of miles away, but his phone was ringing off the hook. The message was clear. If Meek wanted to leave that night, it was going to cost him $50,000. No discussion, no way out. Ross didn't hesitate. He wired the money, knowing that in the world of street politics, this wasn't a debt you wanted to leave unpaid. And just like that, the deal was done. By morning, Meek Mill was free, but freedom always comes at a cost. That night changed him. You don't just walk away from something like that untouched. You carry it with you, in your mind, in your gut, in the way you move. The streets don't do refunds, and the whispers started before the sun even came up. Some said it was a kidnapping, a raw show of power. Others called it a simple business transaction, cold, calculated, nothing personal. But in LA, nothing is ever just business. Meek wasn't stupid. He knew how the game worked. That's why, in the months that followed, his ties to Nipsey Hussle grew tighter. Some said it was out of respect. Others said it was insurance, a way to move smarter, to make sure his name never landed on the wrong side of another conversation. But the silence from Meek and Ross was deafening. No denials, no explanations. Because in this world, there are no press releases, just unspoken truths and debts you hope never get called in. Fast forward to 2025, and the man who once held the cards is now chained to a table in a federal holding cell. Loose Cannon, The same street general who pulled Meek from that club, the same enforcer who brokered a deal at gunpoint, ain't calling no shots anymore. The feds had been watching. Not just him, but the whole damn operation. They had files, wiretaps, surveillance, confidential informants, a case built brick by brick, piece by piece. And when they made their move, they didn't come knocking, they came kicking down doors. 18 arrests, murder, extortion, human trafficking, and at the top of it all, Big U. For years he had walked the fine line between business and the streets, between respect and fear. He built a reputation as a mentor, a community leader, someone who could bring peace where others brought war. But the government saw something different. They painted him as the Don Corleone of South Central, a mastermind hiding in plain sight, running an empire under the banner of a non-profit. The same organization meant to keep kids off the streets, now accused of being the front for some of the most ruthless business the city had seen in decades. The charges were heavy, the sentences even heavier. And suddenly, all the power, all the respect, none of it meant a damn thing behind those bars. And now, we're left with a story that don't have an ending, just more loose threads waiting to be pulled. Did this really happen? Was Meek Mill truly held against his will, or was this just another chapter in the never-ending saga of street politics, industry power plays, and the razor-thin line between respect and extortion? And if it was just business, then what does that say about the industry that surrounds hip-hop? Where alliances aren't built on trust, they're purchased. Where debts don't just disappear, they accumulate. Where silence ain't just a code, it's the cost of survival. One thing's for sure, whatever happened that night, Meek walked out of that club with more than just his life. He walked out with a lesson that money can't teach. In LA, respect isn't given, it's bought. And sometimes the price is steeper than you ever saw coming. This is the untold story of Meek Mill's alleged ransom, one that will remain a mystery unless those involved decide to break their silence. Until then, we're left with rumors, whispers, and the undeniable reality that in the world of hip-hop, the streets are always watching.